Welcome back to Workplace Whiz, your audio gateway to the modern workplace. We designed this podcast as the place to discuss strategies, best practices, and share industry insights with our expert guests. This program is brought to you by Yarooms, the workplace experience platform. I'm Cosmin Patlageanu, marketing professional and published author. Today, we're tackling a challenge that's more relevant than ever in the era of hybrid and flexible work: how to capture and maximize the innovation potential of our teams when they're not always in the same room. In the past, great ideas often came from usual hallway conversation, brainstorming sessions around the office. But as the workplace evolves, so must our strategies for fostering creativity and collaboration. Joining us today is a true innovator in the space. Sam Zellner is a seasoned IP strategist and the driving force behind the Inspire IP and PQAI, two groundbreaking initiatives which are reshaping how organizations manage and protect their intellectual assets. With a focus on leveraging cutting edge technology, Sam is helping companies turn internal innovation into a strategic powerhouse, no matter where the teams are working from. We'll explore how tools and strategies can bridge the gap in hybrid work environments, empower employees to share ideas, and create workplaces where innovation thrives. If you're wondering how to harness your team's full potential in the new era of work, you're in for a treat. Let's dive right in. We've all been part of a meeting or a brainstorming session, sparking something amazing, new ideas. Um, but now, given the new way we work, mostly hybrid, right? Many of the companies work in a hybrid fashion. So many of those spontaneous moments are harder to come by. How do we recreate that spark in today's workplaces?
Well, a good question because it is a different thing. But one of the things that's important to understand is that a lot of times innovations start with the individual. An individual sees a problem, sees an assumption, and starts with that. And then they go and they engage other people to refine the idea, to test the idea. And so I don't think on its surface it necessarily means that remote workers cause less innovation. It's just that, it's useful to have platforms and ways in which people engage with each other after they get an idea. So there's that's the important thing, is not losing that little spark of an idea. And then once you have that spark captured, then I can invite you to say, hey, take a look at this idea, I've been thinking about it, what do you think? And then the ability, and on our platform we provide a chat capability, so we can discuss ideas and share documents and things like that. So I think it's possible to continue with innovation as it is, but it's just you need to have tools in which to interact with ideas. I don't think that's really a big barrier in today's world.
Absolutely. So just before we started, you were saying something which I liked a lot, and it was actually about the process, right? So although it might sound that it's something spontaneous many times, right? But innovation is something that you work towards and that you implement as any other process, if I
That's
got that
true.
right.
That's true. It's just not, you know, as much as people think, well, if I have a good idea, it's first of all, everybody will recognize it. It'll just move by itself. But that's not it at all. It takes a lot of work to get new ideas moving and going and adopted. And why is that? Well, part of it is because a lot of times new ideas is breaking assumptions that everybody has. And as we know, people are uncomfortable with change. And so if I come up with an idea and it breaks assumptions, right away, people are going to resist it. People are going to be uncomfortable with it. So you need to help people, realize that, I tell people, it's the whole idea of the world is flat. Everybody knows the world's flat. And now somebody says, no, the world's round. Whoa, whoa. That's what we're talking about. In my job previously, and not to date myself, but, people were saying that, when cell phones were coming on, hey, people use cell phones instead of wired phones, and everybody's like, "Oh, no, they would never do that. The quality is terrible. They would never do that." And of course, we found it. Everybody did it. It's a huge thing. So that's what's hard about this. And so you need people to, especially in the early part of the idea, to put it in a protective space to allow it to be evaluated fairly.
Absolutely. And what's the process behind that? Because you were saying, and the analogy is really good. It's like you exercise, right? And to some extent, it's pretty much the same thing. So how do you get to, from staying on the couch to going to the gym every day?
Well,
What's the similar process for
uh,
innovation?
so yeah, yeah, I really realized that everybody knows they have to innovate, just like exercise. I know I need to exercise, but today is it's not a good day. I'm going to sit on the couch. So part of it is understanding a process, a training program, right? That's what we understand is, hey, if I'm going to go and exercise, I probably shouldn't run a marathon the first day because it's going to lead me to the hospital, right? So I need a training program, and I need tools, and maybe I need a treadmill, maybe I need a bicycle, something like that to help me do it successfully. And the same way with ideas. I see a lot of people say, oh yeah, we'll just open up to any idea. Yeah. And I don't think they appreciate analyzing ideas. It takes a lot of work. You need people who are have expertise in that area. When I was doing it, we had somebody say, "Hey, I think the truck should have air flaps on them." We are the telecommunications company. Who knows about air flaps on trucks? Well, it was not easy to find somebody who, in the transportation group, that understood and we could analyze this. So, I tell people before you go out and say, "I'm going to exercise and do all these different things," you know, it's better to take a focused area where you have some expertise and work that ideas there and then expand down. Or, maybe another analogy is, if you're learning to swim, don't jump into the deep end. Start in the shallow end and work your way to the deep end. So and this is one of the things that's really hard about innovation. There's a lot of things that are counterintuitive. People are like, I need a lot of ideas, so I'm just going to open up to any ideas. Well, be careful, be careful, because people have a little expectation about, if I give you an idea, that you will analyze it and consider it and provide me a fair response. And I think people will understand if you do that and you say, look at Sam, your idea is a very good idea, but we have a lot of ideas. Prioritize the return on your idea, and the investment is really too much at this point. People can understand that and they can appreciate that. But if you just say, yeah, we're not doing your idea, why? Because it's just different, and we're just not doing different things right now. That's not satisfying.
Absolutely. Uh, so I wanted to ask you, why do organizations often struggle to capture and manage these good and innovative ideas? Is it a thing of process, of tools, maybe
It's
knowledge?
it's a combination. I think one is misconceptions. So again, people assume that, hey, good ideas are recognized right off, and so and I like to use the example of Uber. I think that's a great example where quite honestly, I never would have thought Uber would work. Well, why? Well, because I had this assumption that you had to be certified to be a taxi, and they assume, no, you don't. So that's where it's tricky. You're breaking assumptions, and the other piece that gets important here is people assume that, oh, employees know we want ideas. Well, no, they don't know that. They don't, and if you don't have a process to show them that you want ideas, then they're not going to know. And then also this idea that, oh, just tell your supervisor. If you have an idea, tell your supervisor. He or she will know what to do. Well, your supervisor doesn't know. Obviously, if it has something to do with their group, they can handle that. But once it goes beyond their group, they don't know what to do, and they don't have time. They're not being evaluated on it, so they'll just say, something, don't worry about it right now. Just we'll think about that later. So these are some assumptions and thinking about the process that cause companies to fail. I think if you have a
Well,
tool that shows that, look, at we have a process in which to take ideas in, and we have a group that can evaluate them effectively. They're used to evaluating new ideas, and actually can test them, because sometimes it's about, I think consumers want this. Do they really want this? We didn't think they did. Now you can have a group that can, test it out and do a little market research and find out, hey, he's right or she's right. consumers do want this. So we should implement. The other thing I would say is don't assume, too many companies assume innovation means going around the company. The company doesn't get it and we get it. So, we got to go around the company. And that's a real failure because obviously the company has lots of very valuable resources. They obviously have a sales group, they have a distribution channel, they have existing customers, all these things. So, to go around the company, it'd have to be a completely new business. Otherwise, you want to take advantage of the company. And it's just really an issue of how do you get into the company's normal process? A lot of times, new ideas are too risky for the company. They maybe, a new idea sometimes or many times has legal issues. And so the company's like, the business group is like, "Whoa, I don't know. Are we even allowed to do that?" So you need to do a little prep work beforehand. I tell people you have this risk curve and the company or the business unit has a level of this for the risk curve. Most new ideas come at a higher level. So you need to push it down to the risk curve. So now at a point where now the business unit says, yeah, we can take it on from now, from here and do it.
Absolutely. So I was thinking when you mentioned people would absolutely recognize good ideas, and obviously that's not the case. It's the same with people creating new products because they assume that if the product is good, everybody's just gonna love it and use it,
Right.
right?
That's right.
And then we all marketing people would be, out of jobs. So, but that's not the case eventually,
Yeah.
and I think it's not the case as you mentioned it with innovation and great ideas. Some companies are more prone to recognizing them, and perhaps because of management who's highly innovative and they've started like I don't know 10, 20, 30 companies. Some of them failed, or most of them failed. Some of them worked. They have a sort of a process in place, right? Maybe many times not a process in terms of everything with documentation and everything else, just like a classical program management, but rather they know what to do when they hear about an idea which has some sort of potential. Um, how can companies which don't have that sort of background, because these are normally like tech companies, right? But there is a myriad of other companies on the market in various industries who also innovate. So how do they go about it in their own companies?
Well, and it's a very good point. This is the nice thing about innovation is just like exercise. When you start doing it, you get better and better at it. So that's the nice thing about that encouraging. But like anything new, it takes a little effort. And what you have to do is, like I said, you got to get process. That's where we try and do with Inspire IP. We provide you a process to take in new ideas and then you need a group that starts getting comfortable with working with new ideas. And they have resources because again, new ideas tend to be a little unpolished when they come in. And you need to polish them and get them refined. Um, and you also need to understand that don't assume the person who comes up with the idea wants to lead the project. Many times they don't want to lead the project. They're very interested, they're passionate about it. They'd like to be, consulted on the idea as it goes through the process, but they don't want to lead the project. They have a job they want to do and they enjoy their job. And so that's another sort of mistake that people make. They automatically assume, oh, Sam came up with this idea. He wants to lead the project. Well, Sam, and matter of fact, I would argue that a lot of times innovators tend to be a little disjointed, so they tend not to be the best project managers. So that's why I would say, no, let them be on the board or let them be an advisor to the project, but don't have them be the project manager on it. And once you start doing that and getting that in, that really helps make the process go much better. And one of the little tricks I tell people and it works really well. And again, depends on the size of the company, but a lot of times you have people who you believe are high potential leaders for the company. The young people that have a lot of potential, and these are great projects to give these people because they want to prove themselves. They want to show that they can do things, and so you say, okay, look, I'm gonna have you do your regular job, but I'm gonna give you this project in addition. Don't want you to work on the weekends, but you might have to. Sorry, that might be, but they're going to be excited about it. And I always did. What I did was I always allowed the high potential people. I said, "Hey, here are the projects I have. Who's interested in it? Because I want to know that you believe and you're interested in it." And the nice thing is, if you get somebody like this, they're still doing the regular job. they're going to be very frank with you. They're going to say, you know something, Sam, we thought this was going to be interesting. We did the market research. Customers don't like it. I think we should just shut it down. They'll be very frank because they have nothing to lose on it. Actually, they have more to lose on it, wasting their time on a bad project. Whereas if you put people who have just are standard project managers who have to do it, they're concerned about, well, if I tell them I don't want to do this project because it's a bad project, do I have another project to work on? No. Well, I could lose my job. So let's keep on going with this bad project. So that's part of the tricks, that we help our customers with to make sure that they're successful.
I like that. Like, I was thinking about how many people say they have like a book in the desk somewhere, never published. Like sort of a big idea, and many times I think it's an issue of framework. So if you give people the right framework, then that will get either published or it sees the bin. But
Right.
you're always going to think about, I had that fantastic idea, and it's like romanticize about it and think, yeah, that would have been great if I would have been able to. So this enablement, I think it's a great way. It's a great way forward, and also incentivizing, right? The young ones who
Right. You,
wanna
you,
show
you,
and prove
you,
themselves. Yeah,
you're gonna train the young people to understand how innovation works within the company and how so that's it's a win-win situation there. Also, I would encourage people. Again, we got to keep in mind innovation is a broad subject. It's both what we
right.
call ideas to make the company better, and then you have innovation that can go to patents, intellectual property. So a lot of times company has the two separate tracks for that. I don't believe that's the right way, but it's tough right now. People have that. Um, but you keep in mind, there's both of those ways are obviously very valuable to have. The other thing I would highlight that we got to be careful about in doing innovation is um, a lot of times innovation brings up sort of problems within the corporation. You might see something, I might suggest, hey, why don't we do this? This will fix this thing and all that. And your reaction might be, well, Sam, why didn't your manager think of that? I, I can't understand why your manager didn't do that. Maybe your manager's no good. Maybe we need to fire the manager. And you got to be careful because when you start doing that, then all of a sudden other people within the corporation, particularly the management people, see that, oh, Sam proposed an idea and his manager got fired. Whoa. I quietly tell all my employees, don't put any ideas in the system because I don't want to lose my job. Now, I won't say that. I'll just say, listen, if you have any ideas, give them to me first. I'll help you out and we'll squash them, or at least I'll make sure that it doesn't affect me. So I think you got to be careful. It's very hard for a corporation, but you got to put aside any problems with the company and say, okay, I'll deal with them, but I'm not going to deal with them immediately as part of this innovation effort. Afterwards, I can then say, well, maybe we need to move people around and address it that way. But don't mix innovation and fixing the company's maybe organizational problems because that can kill off innovation.
Absolutely, and they can become. I mean, like I'm thinking, line managers themselves can become bottlenecks, and that can be a surefire way of never having any
Right,
sort of good ideas pop up. Because if you see once or twice this happening, then you're not going to take your ideas to them anymore. And
right.
if that's the only way, going through them, then it's obvious what's never going to happen.
That's it.
Good things are never going
Exactly.
to happen, right?
Exactly.
So
And a lot of people forget that. And that's, that the other thing is use this as an opportunity to engage the employees, make them feel part of the company. I tell people you're surprised, with some of the companies we've done where we did innovation challenges. What we found out from a lot of employees is that, Sam, every day I do my job, enjoy my job and everything, but we don't really have a lot to talk about at lunchtime. But these innovation challenges, we love to talk about them. Now, we can't participate on every one. Some are in areas that we just don't know about, but it helps us understand more about what the company's doing, what's its strategy. And it's encouraging to see, oh, I didn't know the company was thinking about AI. Obviously, they are. Here's a challenge about AI. So that's great. I don't know anything about AI, but And so they felt more a part of the company. They felt loyalty to the company because the company's sharing the ideas, and they were excited about, having an opportunity to do a challenge where they could contribute. So I think use the innovation as an opportunity to teach people about your strategy, teach them about what the company's doing, how they are pushing the envelope on various things, and that their opinion matters and their participation matters. And that's another
Absolutely.
benefit that I think people lose when they talk about innovation.
Absolutely. And when we're thinking about a culture that fosters innovation and communication and creativity, I think they're all kind of interconnected somehow. Um, and we prepared a question about how innovation has changed in the new ways we work, like with distributed teams and so on, because I wanted to shed some light over there. And from one of my experiences running a workshop, if you like, on something new. I wanted to introduce something new in the company, and we had that sort of events going on in the office, so like in person. But it was back then. It was the pandemic. We couldn't go out, and we couldn't obviously all meet in the same room. So we've pretty much respected the process, but done it on online. So it was like a workshop, but it was everybody behind their computers, and somehow we didn't have the same traction and we didn't have the same level of involvement. And it kind of felt to some extent the same as when we are all in the meeting room. Not everybody's going to contribute to the same level. Not everybody's going to be confident in saying things. There will always be people in the back, right? And they will say, unless you ask them something specifically, chances are that they don't say anything at all. So, but I had more of those than I would normally have. So I kind of played around with the rules, and we eventually came up with something. But is there, respecting the process, is there something different when the team is distributed?
Well, I think the key is think about how people come up with ideas. First of all, you got to keep in mind that ideas and sharing your idea is risky, right? I might think, well, I think if we did this, it would help, and it's based off of an assumption I have, which probably is different from everybody else's assumption. So, people can react to it in very strong ways. So you really need a safe space. So a lot of times people are like, well, if we have everybody in a meeting, anybody have any ideas? There'll always be some people, but a lot of people
Yeah,
will say, I'm not going to say anything because I don't know, and I don't want to be embarrassed, and I don't want people to be mad at me, and things like that. Hey, let's use AI, and like people go, what, Sam? Use AI, and half of us will lose our jobs. What are you doing? There's things like that where, you know, so you, so I think you got to recognize that a lot of times it's better to have very safe environments in which people can share their ideas, not necessarily with their peers. It could be shared with a group that does an evaluation so they can test out. Or I like also having mentors. So, you could be my mentor and I could say, I have this idea. What do you think? And you could look at it and say, Sam, you got to understand there's legal implications with this idea. Go back and think about the legal implication. Not saying you're a lawyer, but you need to think about this, or where's the big benefit to the company, or things like that. Because a lot of people don't think about all the aspects of the investment, the return, the legal aspects, what would it do to an existing product base. There are all kinds of things that can come into it, and that's where somebody who provides a safe environment for me to share ideas, you'll get more people engaged. Also, keep in mind, and this is why I'm very big on challenges. Most people don't just come up with ideas. There's, maybe I'll say 5% of the people can just come up with ideas. Most people are like, what's the problem? What are you trying to solve?
right.
And if you
Yeah,
say to them, hey, we're getting too many products returned, oh, I can tell you what you could do, then they can do it. So that's why I encourage people, think about challenges. Challenges are good to get people engaged, start thinking in an innovative way. And then, it works a lot better that way. But it's one of the problems with remote working is you don't make spontaneous connections with people, right? That's the hard thing.
yeah,
And that's the tricky balance. Some people like, the whole open innovation. I can put up an idea up on a board and everybody can see it and that. But, when I was working and doing that, what I found out was just like Facebook and all these other social media platforms, it gets very complicated very quickly because people say things they shouldn't say. People, are hesitant. They don't respond. So, unfortunately, it's a difficult thing to do. What you can do though is when you see two people who come up with ideas that are similar or thinking similar ways, you can encourage them to talk to each other. If you think it'll work out, you can do that, and that can help people. Or if somebody says, I got this idea, but I've never done anything in pricing, you can now go over to the pricing group and say, hey, is anybody interested in working on a new innovative idea having to do with pricing? And you get somebody that way, and that way you get some interaction with different groups. One of the things that one of the groups that companies we worked with that did an innovation challenge, what was really beneficial for them was all of a sudden they got some engineers from a different business unit responding to their challenge. And they were just shocked, like, what? They're not in our business unit. And they said, oh, but we've tackled a problem similar to that. We think this might apply to your business unit. So that's one thing that's nice about doing challenges and opening it up to everybody. You get that interaction between business units, which can be very hard because people don't know what other business units are doing.
Absolutely, and I think this is a fantastic way to actually learn about what's going on in the company, in other parts, in other divisions, in other departments, and so on, because normally people wouldn't get the chance to learn about them. Maybe once per year when you have like all hands on deck sort of meeting, and the CEO goes, and then every department head goes on. This is what we've done, and so on. So it's like, oh, that's a great idea. But somehow I feel that these challenges that you mentioned, I think they are a great idea and a fantastic way to actually get people together. If you hear more about the same thing coming from different directions, you can just put them together. I think that's an incredible way of moving things. One thing that you mentioned earlier was that some people wouldn't have the drive to come forward. That they will feel some sort of risk when they come up with a new idea. What other barriers are there preventing people from actually sharing their ideas?
Well, one which is ironic is recognition. And too many companies are very tight on recognition. I'm always like, don't be tight on recognition. You can spread it around to lots of people. And so what happens is that they feel like, if we work together and you're the focus of all the recognition, then I feel like, you know, I didn't get any, I'm not going to share any more ideas. Nobody appreciated me. So I tell people you can spread recognition around all over the place. You just got to be careful how you term it. If you say Sam was the sole inventor on this idea and he was the only one who made it possible, well then that's going to get people upset,
Yeah.
right? Because every people obviously these ideas take a lot of people. So you can say here's part of the team that made this innovation successful, and you do that. Now, obviously, in some cases, you'll provide monetary awards and things like that, and you need to obviously balance it out
Yeah.
versus what people contribute. But publicly, you can share a lot of recognition everywhere, and you should not be skimping on it. And that really gets people excited. They like to feel like, hey, I was appreciated. And obviously you publicize successes, and now you got to be careful. There's other little things that can get you, like a lot of people say, why are you celebrating Sam's success? That was his job. He should have been doing that. If he wasn't doing that, well, fire him. So you got to be a little bit careful how people perceive things, and that's where you need to structure it in a way that says, "Hey, look, this is successful." Whether it's in its job scope or whatever. The point is, it helped the company, and we want people helping the company. But you got to be careful that if people feel like that was Sam's job. Sam's job is to help customers. You're celebrating Sam because he helped the customer. That's not innovation. So you got to make sure it's clear that there was some innovation here that was beyond the normal. This is what we normally do. Because if you do things that sound hollow, obviously you lose credibility there. So
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking about a really good friend of mine, and before the bots, became something interesting, and then before they all kind of converged into the bigger AI scheme of things, he did some automation. So he worked in a bank, um, and he did some stuff, automated some things in tables, cross platforms. Um, and then one of the managers figured it out and said, "Well, that's absolutely amazing. How did you do that? Let's do that, all across." And he goes, "Yeah, this is how I done it. Not a big thing." I mean, he didn't actually think about it as like a big innovation, right? And he he was, telling me the story, and I was like, I was actually lazy, and I was like, oh my god, I have so much to do. Is there a way I can kind of automate it because it's also boring and So he's done that. My main motivation was that because I was a little bit lazy, and he got the recognition. Obviously, in the meantime, he's been for many years with the company. He's like super smart guy, and obviously found his way up. And He got the recognition, like full blown recognition. And if you think about it, the process wasn't a very standard process at all. I mean, he figured it out, tested it, so that it was working, and then implemented it. And then somebody else discovered it and said, let's do it like everywhere because it's a fantastic idea. Um, and the fact that that has been full blown, all across the company is because of their culture. And not necessarily because somebody asked him to come up with an innovative idea, right? Because innovation, as you mentioned, it has got many shapes and forms, and also can occur in many ways. But the most important thing is that they kind of figured it out, and they saw that this is potential right here, really big potential. If we scale this up, this is going to be amazing. You also mentioned challenges as a great way to kind of culturally stimulate people to come up with ideas. What else can we do?
Well, I think, and your point is very well taken. There's some people that are very bright, and it's sort of interesting. They don't think of their ideas as great ideas. It's like, well, I'm sure a lot of
Yeah,
other people thought of that. I'm like, no, 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 that was brilliant. That's so that actually becomes a challenge for you. You have people that are loud and they talk about their ideas all the time, and a lot of times they're not really very good. And then you have these other people who are quiet who don't really say too much. And those are actually the hardest people to engage because they do things that are, like you point out, very bright, and they have ability to replicate across the company, but they don't toot their own horn. They tend to be very low key about it. Um, and that's where I think you have to have this broad definition of innovation and engagement so that other people can say and get recognized to say, look at Sam had this great idea. He's been doing it here. I think we should be doing it other places. And then people are like, wait, but you're not the inventor. Sam is the inventor. But this is the whole idea of sharing recognition. It's not about, who absolutely came up with the idea. It's about who helped to get the idea to the company and to make it implemented to get some benefit. And all those people who are involved should be recognized. So if you are working with somebody who's brilliant and you're like, "Oh my god, that's a brilliant idea. We should take," it's okay for you to say, "This is a great idea. It wasn't my idea, Sam's idea, but we should move it over to the rest of the company." That should be okay. There should be no like, "Well, you're not the inventor of it. Sam's the inventor." No, that's, because again, people are modest, people, busy, and it's all about helping the company and making the company successful.
absolutely. But because this process was pretty much non-standard, if you like, could you walk us through some of the processes or tools which are normally used or necessary to make sure that all these ideas go through all? I mean, no matter the result, they could be good or bad. They need to be tested, validated, and so on. But how do we make sure that they even see the light of day, so to speak?
Yeah, so with our system, we allow people to put in ideas. They can collaborate on those ideas. We have other, co-inventors, collaborators with those ideas. They submit the ideas. Then you usually have somebody triage them. So initially, just see either issues here, things aren't clear. It can ask for additional information on them. And you can structure it as, what is the problem you're solving, how you solve it, what have people done before, or what is the company doing right now on this. You know, um, you might ask what kind of risks or concerns, or what the investment is, or what the return is on this. I think the key thing is keep it relatively light, because you can always go back and ask for more information. But if you don't get the idea coming to you at all, you've lost. And it's a little unfair to have people spend a lot of time on an idea and then you say, no, we're not going to do it. Well, I spent, a week on that. That's a huge, if you knew right off that if I gave you a paragraph, you weren't going to do it, it would have been nice to know that before I spent a whole week. So I think you want to make it light. The people who bring it in, they need to have the evaluators. They need to have, again, resources in a number of different areas. There's always legal issues when you talk about ideas.
Yeah.
The finance side, you need people in finance to be able to evaluate it. You need people in engineering and operations to understand the cost of things. You might need somebody in sales and marketing. So you want the different disciplines to be looking at it, because again, your point here is you want to bring down the risk level to it. If it looks like a good idea, you need to bring it down. You need to shape it sometimes to make it. I remember one time I was working with an idea, and I talked to the business unit about it, and the business unit said, "Hey, Sam, we like the idea, but you have it in red. We think it should be blue." And so, again, as courtesy, I went back to the inventors and I said, "Look, you know, you have it in blue. They want it in red. Um, we got to change the color. I really think if we're going to get this implemented, we got to let them do it the way they want to do it. But I reserve the right, but afterwards, when they realize it was a wrong color, you can come back to them and say, "I told you so." But, we gotta compromise, and that's something that's important for inventors to realize is, you gotta do a little compromising here, because we gotta get it to the people who can implement it, and they obviously have understanding of the marketplace, of their operations, their cost structure, and things like that. And so you need to, experiment a little bit here. But I would say that the key thing for this is you got to have resources for the evaluation team to look at it fairly, and uh, be able to do it in a, I'll call it, in a scientific method, not just a gut of, I don't think we do that. Oh, I don't think people with phones would never go with a cell phone. The quality's too bad. You know that
Yeah.
that doesn't count. You got to evaluate it. And that's, I
Yeah.
think that's the key piece. Now, the nice thing is with AI, you can use we use AI to help fill out the forms. So you can do that. You can use AI to help categorize the ideas, because it's nice to have ideas in specific areas. We also use AI to look at all the ideas, because when you start getting a lot of ideas, it's hard to know, did we look at an idea like this before? Was there something like this
Mhm.
before? And so we use AI to look through the ideas to tell you, here's the other ideas that are closest to this idea. So if you looked at it before and you did some analysis, you can say, oh yes, we did do some analysis on this, and here's why we probably won't do analysis on this because we've already done it, or something like that. So we use AI to do a number of things within the process. It's obviously a very powerful tool and very helpful. You still need people, obviously, to actually do the analysis, but AI can help in a number of different ways.
Absolutely. Before we dive into the AI part, because I got some questions there as well,
Mhm.
I wanted to ask you a couple of things. So one is regarding the budget, because you mentioned the resources. Should there be like a budget for testing out ideas, making that happen at least in like a POC or something like that? What do you think?
You do need a budget. There is cost to this. You got to keep in mind, and that's a very good point. You maybe are presenting ideas to a business unit in the middle of the budget cycle, right? And you
Yeah.
say, "Look, take this idea." Well, it hasn't been budgeted. We don't have money for it. So how are we going to do anything? So you need to provide money so that a business unit can take on something in mid cycle. They might need marketing dollars. They might need manufacturing, things like that. So, and you clearly you need money to do analysis on some of these
Yeah.
projects and things like that. So that's a very good point. You do need budget there, um, and that's where having senior support is critical to this, because obviously the senior management can make money available for critical things. And so
Hmm.
that's a way in which you can do that.
I was thinking about, where we could squeeze this in as a budget category, right? And kind of always go back to when I first had to put together a budget for the whole year. And I went through a lot of documentation, things I learned in the university, called friends, asked people around because I had no idea how to do it properly, right? And my boss was like, "You just come up to me with the budget, and then we'll see." And I went through the things that I've done in the previous year, and trying to get an understanding of how much they cost and kind of put something together, right? And I presented the budget, and then they said, "Yeah, this is cool. Now cut 10%." I was like, "Where should I cut from?" I said, "I don't know. You've done the budget, you know." It's like then it hit me. I hadn't added anything, so when people ask for cuts, I have some place to cut from. So the next year, I added like 10% for who knows what, right? But I was thinking now maybe the budget for innovation projects or things that might happen could go into like transformation, right? Because a lot of people and a lot of companies are big on transformation, digital transformation, any sorts of transformation. Could we have like a category of budget over there? Because some ideas, or perhaps many ideas, are transformative, right?
For
And
sure. For
if
sure.
they go
Yep.
through, then I think they could fit right in, right?
Yep, I think so. Now, also keep in mind that when you do challenges, you want to do a challenge where there's an owner, right?
Yeah,
So it could be, the product development group, it could be the sales team or something like that. So they're having a challenge, they're having an owner. They tend to have then money because this is an important issue. So in that
yeah,
case, it makes it a little bit easier. When you start taking ideas from everywhere, then you don't necessarily know who your owner might be. And so then you do need, funding to do the analysis and and then if you're pushing an idea on a business unit, they're going to say, "Well, you're going to have to give me some funding to help me push this idea. Even though I like it, I can't just stop everything else, because
yeah.
obviously I went through the same thing you went through, the 10% cut,
Mhm.
so so
As
that's
everybody else, yeah,
yeah, exactly. So
yeah.
I think this is a very good point. When you start taking just general ideas, you need budget there, and it definitely makes sense that it's transformational. But I'd also say you can make an argument too that this is also part of the training program because again, if you have
Mhm.
high potential people doing this, then they're learning from this. So it's also part of training for our new leaders coming up.
That's a
And
fantastic
and
take.
also
Yeah.
don't underestimate how much when you do these, and depending on how you do it, you know, you can have big ideas and little ideas. So if you have big ideas, you can have it go to the management team to present, and they really like that. They really enjoy seeing the employees, which they don't tend to get to interact with employees at that level, presenting ideas and they learn it.
Mhm.
And, for them, they learn about the company. They're like, wow, didn't realize we don't do that. No, we don't do that. Oh my gosh. So, there's
Yeah.
a lot of benefit there.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask you about a special category of people, similar to the wannabe authors who have the book and the manuscript in the desk drawer. There's a category of people who have one great idea, one big idea, but as time passes, they feel fonder about it and they like it even more. And, the connection is really strong. And I suspect that's also a limiting factor in the sense that they are not that keen in, pitching their idea or talking about it as a certain fear of rejection kind of sets in, right? So what if my great idea won't go through? Is it something that you seeing, like because you've implemented a lot of processes for innovation? Is it something that you encountered? And if so, what would be like a good way in incentivizing these people to come forward?
So there's a couple of important points here that you bring up. Is one is don't assume that people are comfortable presenting, right? Some people
Yes.
are not comfortable, particularly in front of a group or something like that. So when we were doing it, we provided presenters. So if you don't want to, we'll provide you a presenter. You're not good at putting a PowerPoint together. We'll provide you somebody to do a PowerPoint for you. So you have resources to help the people feel comfortable about it. Also, you need to communicate, and this is why we also provided short videos of people who had ideas that it didn't work out, and they explain what happened. I thought this idea would work, and then it turned out that manufacturing said this is going to be very complicated, and the cost was too much. But I was very passionate about it. So you show some ideas that don't make it, and you
Yeah.
recognize, hey, Sam tried it, but it didn't work out. But he's going to have more ideas. I always emphasize to people, hey, you'll have more ideas. It's not just about one idea. You'll have more ideas, and you learn from your failures here, in terms of what I didn't assume, or I should have assumed, or something like that. So I think, yeah, that's all you can do is help make people feel more comfortable. And again, not on a big stage. You first allow me to submit it to a group that can evaluate it and give me constructive feedback on it. And the key thing is, you got to give feedback. You got to do it in a timely way. You got to show people you really considered their idea, and then that
Mhm.
builds up trust. And um, and then, they'll share the idea. They'll understand why maybe this idea that's always been their passion didn't work out, and they'll say, well, okay, maybe I can go on to something better from that. Because you always want to be encouraging. Hey, you're
Yeah,
on the right track,
absolutely.
but we've looked at that. A lot of times I tell people, try not to, especially in the beginning, invent outside your backyard, is what I call it.
Mm.
What you're familiar with, what you do, that's the best area, because you have the best insight. When you start trying to go somewhere else where you don't interact, guess what? You're going to find out that other people have done that before. There are issues why that's not being done, and things like that. Nothing wrong with questioning and asking, but you'll find the most success being in those things that you're very familiar with, and you have insights that other people don't have.
That's a great point. I wanted to ask you also about intellectual property. So we had this situation in one of the companies that I used to work with. Here comes a guy and says, "I have like a brilliant idea, but I kind of want like $500,000 for it."
Right, right.
And it's like, maybe the idea is worth half a million. What's the idea? She's like, I won't gonna tell you unless you like commit. You're gonna give me the money. And there was a big back and forth, and the guy became really annoying at some point. And I was like, I don't have the money. It's not my decision. You gotta go to the owner of the company and say, hey, here's my idea, and this is why it's gonna work your time and this amount of money, right? And we didn't have like a proper process in place. How do you get your ideas, and then how do you transfer them to the company, and how are they actually part of the company's intellectual property, and how can you get paid for that, and so on. So it was a big, um, a really big endeavor. In the end, the idea didn't go through. It wasn't worth that much money, and he figured it out, and he was like, "Yeah, I'll come up with something else eventually." But one of the things that he mentioned was that unless you're ready to kind of commit to this, then I'm gonna go, some other company.
Yeah,
And obviously, this, yeah,
that's a common one. I ran into it
yes,
quite a bit, and there's a couple of things, right? One, you can sort of talk the heavy-handed piece of saying, hey, anything you do within the company owns. That's typically standard. But I think it's better, before you go heavy-handed like that, is just to say to the person, well, you understand that if you want to go off and do this, you probably have to mortgage your house. You'll probably have to work, 24 hours, 7 days a week for a couple of years. And you know that probably 90% of new businesses fail.
yeah,
So if you're ready to do that, okay. But to me, that's a lot of risk, to roll the dice to do. Um, and, again, I tell people you will have more ideas. So why not learn from this first one, and then you can get more ideas. Um, and oh, by the way, just to get the patent is going to cost you, $20,000. And oh, by
mhm,
the way, the patent won't issue for about 4 years. So, if you're good with all these things, and most people start realizing, oh gosh, I'm not ready to mortgage the house. I'm not ready to put $20,000 on this idea. Don't even know if I'll get a patent on it and whether I can enforce it and all these things. It's very, it's very risky, and I don't think anybody would be surprised to hear that. Guess what? Starting a new business is very risky and very hard, and just on an idea is very, very hard. So I say to people, learn from this experience. Okay, you're going to have more ideas. Learn, and the nice thing is, if it doesn't work out, you haven't lost anything. You still have your job. You'll get.
Right.
If we file a patent, you'll probably get some sort of compensation for that. Granted, it's not millions of dollars, but you'll probably find out that the company finds it very hard to get millions of dollars right off from your idea. It's going to be a combination of lots of different things. So that's what I tell them. Uh, uh, and a lot of times when they really think about it, I go, "Hey, go back, think about it." But this is the harsh reality. And oh, by the way, if you get a patent, you get it on your resume. That looks very good. You can recognize, you can tell everybody that was my idea. Here's the patent. You know, all those things, very good. Um, and that usually calms the people down, about
Yeah.
that. So, but it
It's
is,
kind of the way
it
we
comes up
approach it. Yeah.
it comes up all the time. It's a very common thing that people feel, very passionate about.
Yeah. And because they're very passionate and they're strong believers in their ideas, and they should be,
It should be.
they come heavy handed, right? Like, unless this, then that. And the way I managed it back in the day was like, okay, if you're so certain, just do like an impact plan, a project plan, figure it out, see the amount of money that we need to put into the project, how the team should be looking like. But what if it doesn't work? I mean, these are resources, and they were already about 200, $300,000 back in the day.
Hmm.
Who's gonna take the loss? I mean,
Right.
if you
Right.
want, you can chip in if you like. And it was like, no, no,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Exactly.
I
Exactly.
wasn't
It's
trying to
it's
talk him down.
risky.
I was just showing him the risks that he didn't think about. And then he was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to think about it. I said, just if you go to the competition with it, there might be legal issues, so consult with someone from legal first. I don't want to go into those details. But I
Yeah.
think the worst thing to do is say, the idea is already mine because you're working for me. And that's
Right.
never going to foster innovation,
That,
right?
that doesn't be exactly. That doesn't instill, a good
Trust.
sense of
Yeah,
trust. Right. That's right. I think
absolutely.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. I wanted to ask you also about IP, but in the context of AI, right? So there was a meme I saw earlier today, and it was about middle fingers, and it was a hand with six fingers, and it was like, yeah, because AI can't count properly. And we have all seen these AI generated images. Now they're getting better and better, but we've seen them, and people have like 3 feet, or they have three eyes, or things like that. There is obviously the human touch that kind of many times, or most of the times, make things better. Um, how is that in terms of IP? I mean, we all use to some extent AI probably these days. Um, how do we tackle it in such a way that it doesn't infringe things?
Yeah, well, I think I think we got to look at AI in two different scopes. So, for example, I'm leading an open source AI prior art search engine. It's a fancy way of saying, can is your idea novel or not? And in
Mhm,
that case, what the AI is doing is interpreting the concept you put in and tries to find documents that relate to your concept. And in that case, you don't really have to worry about hallucinations so much because it's just
mhm,
providing you a search capability on concepts. It's obviously when you're saying it's generative AI and it's generating things like that that you need to be sensitive to this. And I tell people, that a nice way to really test and get familiar with AI and how it does things is take something you're very familiar with, whether it's
mhm,
a product, or something like that, and ask AI, would you describe this to me? And that's when you start finding that all of a sudden it puts in things that you're like, whoa, where did that
mhm,
come from? So I describe AI as a new employee, a young employee that wants to please you, and he or she will provide you something to please you. And unfortunately, like any new employee, they do things that they get things wrong, they maybe copy things and things like that. And that's why you need to be familiar with the area in which you're working with AI, and so that you don't get yourself caught in something like that. But it's a tool that's very powerful. Obviously, it's going to change. how we do things. And if you're not utilizing it, you're missing out. You just know, like any tool, you need to know how to use it. Use it. I think of it as Excel, right? Excel is a great tool. It
Yeah.
will put numbers all together and all that. But of course, you could put in a date by mistake in a column of numbers, and it might just add the date in there. It's like 1981, or now it just added that number in. So it does things. So in the same way, I think you just got to be careful with AI, but you should be utilizing it. We we encourage people with with PQAI, the patent quality artificial intelligence system, to query their ideas, to get a sense of their ideas. It's available for people to utilize. Um, yeah, it still doesn't tell you, and one of the things that's careful is it doesn't tell you whether your idea is not that valid or not.
Mhm.
Whether the novelty, you need to read the documents and look at it. And quite honestly, you probably need to be a patent attorney to really appreciate that. But it gives you a sense of where your idea and maybe how novel your idea potentially could be. So I think it's changing everything. It's a great tool to help you innovate. It can help you, think about ideas. You can provide an idea, and it can give you feedback, and you can think about it in
Mhm.
different ways
And really quickly, right?
and very
Um,
quickly. Yes, of course.
I like the analogy of like a new hire trying to impress, and I was also thinking about the ways AI can mess up things, right? And copying is one of them. I did have a young colleague at some point. I was working with an advertising agency, and we had this new client that was a big client, and they wanted a website back then for a campaign. And he came up with something, but like really, really fast, and it was really, really good. And I was like, "Oh, this guy is like fire." And then he hit me as like, for some reason, it looks familiar-ish. The colors weren't that familiar, but the rest of it was. He actually copied a website from, unfortunately, competition of these guys. And before I took it to the client, pitching it and so on, I was like, am I walking into a trap because of what you did? And I was like, well, what do you mean? No, of course not. I was like, because if I am, I'm going to be in a very, very difficult spot and because of you. I mean, I like the idea. I find it hard to believe that you've done it so quickly. So unless you're some sort of a genius, then tell me where you got it from. And he eventually came out and said, yeah, I might have gotten some inspiration from somewhere. So can I see the source of your inspiration? It was one-on-one. It was just, he just changed the colors. And I was like, okay, so this is not acceptable. I like the fact that you are looking at what other people do for inspiration, but you cannot copy. And this is something that we need to take into account when we ask AI, right, about stuff. He might come up with things which are very similar to things which already exist, and we should be careful about that as well.
And
I wanted to ask you, in terms of IP, is there any danger in using tools um,
well,
like
I mean,
generative AI and so on?
exactly what you're talking about. Obviously, you can have copyright infringement with things like that. Um, you know, you can come up with ideas that maybe are not novel ideas because the AI has just pulled from something somebody else has done. There are other questions about who's the inventor. If you want to get into really
Mhm.
technical things about patents, some people argue does AI is AI an inventor or not. So there can be aspects like that. And of course people are also very nervous. Do you have leakage with AI? Are the people training on your idea? Are they keeping that as content to share to other people? So like any new tool, I tell people, like any new tool, you need to be cognizant of the potential risks that it brings in, legal issues that it creates, leakage it could create, hallucinations, all these things.
Mhm.
So, I think, like you did, you got to be careful with where you use AI. You got to make sure if you're using AI and it's an area that you have familiarity with, so you can judge on what it does. Because again, it's like a new employee. This new employee wants to please you and will
Yeah.
do whatever they can to please you. And so you just got to treat it that way. But
Absolutely.
again, it can save a lot of time, a tremendous amount of time.
No, I like that. I mean, it's fantastic. The speed at which they're working is great, and I'm also using them. Of course, I do have some question marks regarding the way they train, but you know, there is like a balance between what I need to get done, the risks that I'm exposing myself, and the project I'm working on with, and so on. Um, I like your the way you use it, right? With the repository of ideas and asking it, is this novel? Is it something that's been done before? Because that's actually a way of understanding if it has been done before, why didn't it work? To the extent of me hearing about it, and it's kind of saving me a lot of money and trouble and time and so on. Or maybe I can think of novel ways to actually make it work, which the previous guys haven't. So that could be
Right. I think you can learn from other people's work. I mean, that's in theory, that's what patents are about. It's about building off of other people's, inventions and making them better. So I think it's a it's a very good method to help in terms of that.
absolutely. And that was uh, somehow I don't think people speak enough about it, that you can actually use other people's ideas as long as you recognize them and pay, for the patents and so on. It's not mandatory that you always come up with like the newest and brightest idea, something that's never been done before, right? But I'm also thinking about this culture that's been developed in Silicon Valley and startup ecosystem is like, if you're gonna fail, fail quickly, make sure that you fail fast, so then you don't waste a lot of resources. But not every idea kind of fits the bill. There are some things which need a lot more time to get there out there, right?
It
Um,
that's I mean, not everything's so simple. You can't always send out a failed product, but depending on, what it is people are doing there, yeah, there's complexities here. The world is not so simple that just, send out anything. And especially when, companies have reputations too. So you got to look for safe environments if you're going to launch something, very fast like that. But I think you got to be careful not to overanalyze too. I think there is a danger there that it's very hard to understand what the marketplace wants in certain areas, and so by allowing customers to experiment with it, they can give you feedback on it. It can and obviously help get you to the right product at the right time much quicker. So that's what I think where you can use safe environments in which to provide a concept that's very powerful, and I think the right customers appreciate that, and they want to give you feedback. They want to feel a part of partnering it. And I'll just throw in here, we for our product, we provide a free trial, so you can do a challenge.
mhm.
So we understand people, are a little new to this. They want to understand it. We'll provide you a free trial to do a challenge, so you can see this is how the process works, and you can see how powerful it is. I think a lot of people are always surprised at how many ideas people have. I tell people there is no shortage of great ideas. It's just we're not
Absolutely.
engaging people to get those ideas.
Absolutely. And one thing that I think is happening is people see it in a sort of a binary way. It either fails or succeeds. And I think that's overly simplistic, right? Because if you have a product, and this is coming from a recent conversation I had with a friend of mine, and he was like, "What if I'm launching this and it's not going to work perfectly?" And I said, "Nothing works properly,
No.
like 100% of the time, 100% of the situations." And think about Microsoft; it crashes sometimes, and it's a colossus. It's something huge. It's one of the biggest tech companies in the world, and they still have some bugs here and there. And what's happening is that when you discover such an issue, you just raise a ticket and raise your hand and say, "Hey, I encountered this," and then there is a team that's going to take care of the things, and they're going to work next time. And that's a process of iteration, right? So
Mhm.
this first version is going to work only so well. Some things are not going to work properly, so then you need to fix them and then release the next one. And so it's like, oh, Never thought
I
about it
think
that
again,
way, right?
yeah, I think it's exactly it. I think you just, obviously, if you're doing a autonomous vehicle, there's a certain level of reliability you need versus, if I'm doing a word processor and all right, sometimes it crashes and, you might lose your document. That's, the context is the key. But, in most cases, you can put something out there where provide at least a minimum grade of service that's useful for the customer. And again, like I said, in some cases we have, people use beta, right? They use beta and said,
Yeah,
"Hey, listen, I got a beta. I know you're a pioneer. You want to try new things. Here's my beta. Try it." So I think there are avenues in which you can do that. Yeah. And as you point out, feedback is really critical when you're doing innovation. You don't get it right the first time, and so that's why you need that type of feedback.
absolutely. So we talked about the challenges. We talked about what's stopping people from sharing ideas, about the cultural things. What would be your, because you've been involved in so many projects, what would be the top tip for somebody who's looking to actually implement such a process in the company, or just foster more good ideas?
Yeah, and so I think first of all, again, getting management buy-in. It might not be all managers; it might be one VP, but you need somebody at a senior level to buy into this. Like I said, I think doing a challenge initially is much easier way to do it if you're going for what I'll call ideas to try and improve the company. It's a sort of a different beast if you're doing it for patent collection. Doing it for patent
Mhm.
collection is a different process. So I'm talking about for innovation, for ideas. I think it's best to start off with a challenge because it is a learning process. And rather than get into the deep end, you do a challenge. People can see how much benefit it has. Uh, and they'll see, if you do it with an executive that has power on that area, they can make sure it's implemented. And that's what better way to show people you're really serious about innovation when you show them, hey, I did a challenge, here's an idea, and we are implementing. That's huge. Um, Again, I think you need to have a system. Don't assume that people understand that they can put in ideas. You got to have a system and a process to manage it because you'll find out you get a lot of ideas, and if you can't manage it carefully and track it, monitor it, things fall through the cracks. People get upset there. So that would be the next thing. I think you need to have a group that can evaluate ideas objectively. So, and that's where sometimes we have a VP who's leading it. That VP can have part of their team evaluate it, who really understand the process and all, and are open to new ideas. And with the VP listening to the ideas too, that helps to keep everybody honest. And finally, I think it's important to you know show recognition broadly because showing success and everybody who's involved helping it go forward sends a message to everybody. Oh, okay, it's not just about the innovator; it's everybody who helps to make the idea a success because that's what you're going to need. There are very few ideas that just one person does, and then that's it. So those
Yeah.
are the things I think you can do. And like I said, I think you're going to be surprised at how many people get engaged, how excited people are about it, and what a benefit to the company.
It's fantastic insights, and thank you so much for making it sound so easy, right? Because if you put everything in perspective, it's like, hey, I could do that. I could have somebody on my team evaluate things. I can put a little bit of money aside, for that. I can do a sort of a challenge. So I think this is exactly what we need, right? In companies which don't have the habit of doing that already.
I really believe that your companies that get going on this will find that it creates a culture of excitement about your company. Whatever your company does, it's going to create a culture of excitement. It's going to get people talking about the company, about how it's doing things that are makes people proud. It'll help you with recruiting too, because people who want to join the company, they want to think you're doing new things. They don't want to hear that you're just doing the same. Hey, we've been doing this for 50 years, and this is how we do it, and that's how it is.
Right.
That's not exciting. Young people, that's not what they want to do. They want to do things, that are moving things forward. And so that's where this is going to have repercussions all around the company. And it'll reduce your churn too in terms of losing employees. Because people, it's about money, but it's also about the environment. And this is something you can control. So, and again, I would say that we can provide you a challenge platform. So it doesn't cost you anything. We'll give you guidance on how to set it up, and within a month, you can have a lot of ideas and a lot of things going, and you can evaluate it and see what you think. And like I said, we've talked to employees, we've done surveys of employees, and we've gotten very positive results from employees, even if they weren't, part of the winning team of the challenge. They liked it.
Absolutely, it's the process many times. Yeah. So on that note, Sam, thank you very much for joining us and for sharing this huge amount of information about how to actually foster innovation. It's something that I think we should talk about more. Right?
I agree. It's I believe innovation makes for a better world. So, uh, and thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate it. It's quite enjoyable talking
Absolutely.
with you.
That was fantastic. Thank you very much, then.